So you've got salt and pepper or platinum hair, and you're getting that amazing yellow tint to it that everybody loves so much, right? Well, by the end of this video, you're gonna know some of the reasons that that happens, and some ways to keep it from happening, and more importantly, some ways to deal with it when it unfortunately happens. So yeah, let's dive in. Not a bad little river, right? Before we can jump into how to address this concern or how to prevent it from happening, we first have to understand some reasons that it does happen. So some of the main reasons that it happen are kind of in categories of either environmental categories or product usage. Now, environmental causes are stuff like if you live in an area where you're on well water. I see it all the time in the salon. Well water, because of the mineral content, can absolutely make hair yellow. Another thing is copper piping. Copper piping in your house, that can definitely do it as well. Another issue is if you either smoke or live around somebody that does smoke. But I would say that those are kind of the three major concerns that I see from an environmental standpoint. Now, keep in mind, when I go through these, there are other reasons that your hair will yellow. I honestly don't even know all of them, but I'm basically sharing what I find to be the most common. Now, moving into product usage, this is more about stuff that you're obviously either using to style your hair, to shampoo your hair, or to condition your hair. So one thing I see is if you're using a shampoo or conditioner that has a lot of color dye in it, okay, when I mean color dyes, I'm not talking about the blue or purple shampoos. I'm talking about shampoo that you look at and when you squeeze it out, it literally is like bright red or bright yellow or some crazy color. I've seen that actually create yellow in hair. So that is definitely something you want to pay attention to. Another thing that I see that causes it are protein treatments. Protein treatments, if you go to the salon, you go get a protein treatment, you're thinking, hey, I'm doing this great, wonderful thing for my hair. That actually can cause yellowness. Heat can also cause this coloration concern. The reason for the heat concern, where it comes from, is because your hair has something called a cuticle. And you have to think of the cuticle as basically armor for your hair. It's these plates that lay down over your hair. And when your hair experiences heat or chemical processing, stuff like that, it can lift up that cuticle, and that's part of the reason that it becomes damaging. But that also is lifting up that linkage in your armor. And that means it's more susceptible to that discoloration. So that is something that you definitely want to pay attention to. So those are the main reasons that I see it happen. And as I said, there's probably more, but let's move on to talking about how we can avoid some of these circumstances. But first, I was gonna go down there to that river, but all I see is a steep hill and me falling in a river. So I'm just gonna enjoy it from here. All right, on to the tips. Okay, so let's talk about some ways that you can help yourself avoid this yellow tint. Now, keep in mind, I use that terminology very specifically. I said help avoid. I didn't say completely avoid. You may still work through some of these processes and find that it still happens and wonder what is going on. But it definitely will help you eliminate as much of this concern as you possibly can. Okay, one way, of course, if you're around somebody who's smoking or you yourself smoke, would be to get yourself out of that situation to begin with, right? So if you're around somebody that smokes inside, try to get them to start smoking outside. Give yourself a little bit of air in between you. But a lot of times, if you're in a car with somebody that smokes, especially with the windows up, or you're in a house or you smoke, this is almost without question gonna happen. So you just try to mitigate that as much as you possibly can. When we're talking about shampoos, looking for a shampoo that's with a pH balance closer to 5, that's gonna be less aggressive. Therefore, it will help to keep from opening the cuticle too much, and that can help mitigate the concern a lot. Speaking of showering, you can go as far as getting a water filter that will help filter out some of the minerals if you find that you are either on well water or if your water is just harder for whatever reason. Now, what you're gonna look for is something called a water softener. So I don't have one specific one that I prefer or that I recommend, but I would look up which ones are working best, try to find some reviews, and pick one accordingly. Another way would be to be mindful about how you're using heat. Pay attention to what salon services you're getting. Pay attention to essentially how you're taking care of your hair. Now, the next tip is extreme. It's really extreme. But with that said, it can work for you if this is that much of a concern. What if you're in a situation where you have copper pipes or maybe the water softener just doesn't seem to be working for you? In those scenarios, you can try using distilled water when you shampoo your hair. which would mean that you don't use it every single time you get in the shower. On the days that you don't shampoo, you try to keep your hair dry. But on the other days when you're actually using shampoo, you would rinse it with bottled water. I know that may absolutely sound crazy to you, but if it's that much of a concern, that is an option that you have if you're willing to put that much effort into it. Hey, more power to you. Okay, so those are some ways that you can help mitigate the concern. So now let's talk about some ways that you can address the concern when it, unfortunately, probably inevitably happens. And by the way, I don't know if you can hear that in the background, but I'm about to show you something that is kind of amazing. And at the very end of this video, I want to share a very important message that I need you to understand. All right, so now let's get to that amazing view you're about to see.
There's a wind and it's blowing. There's a current that's running deep. I can't see, but I know it. That something's not what it's meant to be. Hearing brother against brother now. Anger grows on divided ground. Sometimes I think that I lost the sound of the calm inside of me.
I don't even know if this is a great place to film because you probably can't even hear me because of that. How incredible is that? Okay, so anyway, now let's chat real quickly about how to deal with it once it happens. Because like I said, unfortunately, this happens all the time. And even if you use all the steps to keep it away, it's still likely to happen on some level. So here are some ways that we can address it once it does happen. Now the first way, and probably the most common way that you're gonna be aware of, is using blue shampoo. Blue shampoo can work incredibly, but we just have to understand that blue shampoo doesn't remove the yellow, it just kind of counteracts the yellow. So it hides it, if you will, but it's still there. So while it does work, just be aware that we're just putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, if that makes sense. Another way, and I would actually use this in conjunction with the blue shampoo, so not necessarily on the same day, but just also use this, would be a clarifying shampoo. Now the thing about clarifying shampoos is we want to be a little bit careful about how often. You don't want to use a clarifying shampoo every single time you shampoo because that can be too strong for your hair. So while on one hand you've addressed maybe some of the yellow issue, you're drying your hair out, and who wants that, right? So we want to balance it. I typically say once a week if you're shampooing your hair a couple times a week, once a week. And on the days that you do use a clarifying shampoo, you're going to want to make sure to use a little bit deeper of a conditioner so that you can put back into your hair and all the important vitamins, etc., that shampoo is stripping out. Now, if you want to get a little bit more aggressive with it, you can always actually tone it. Think of a toner like a color. It's a bit like a blue shampoo on steroids. Now, you can go to the salon and you can have them tone it, or you can tone it yourself at home. Now, if you're a person that does color your hair at home or cut your hair at home, just don't forget I have a masterclass where I teach people how to do that the right way. So if you want to learn more about that, there'll be a link in the description of this. But you definitely can use a toner at home. It would be like putting on a color blend on your hair, and then that's going to help to, again, cancel out that yellow. Another option would be going to the salon and actually having them do a clarifying treatment. Not all salons offer this, but it is something that salons can do. So it's essentially, again, like clarifying shampoo, but on steroids, if that makes sense. So those are the main ways that you can address it once it happens. I personally have a tendency, depending on how bad it is, to lean more towards simply using blue shampoo, using a clarifying shampoo once a week, and then worst case scenario, toning it if it's absolutely necessary. If you have another system that you've been using at home that's worked really well for you, I'd love to hear it. Comment below, let me know. I never claim to know everything, so who knows what you've been doing, and if it's been working, yeah, share it. Okay, so there's something very important that I want you to understand. I got this comment actually on my video of my last video, actually speaking specifically of this hat right here. And I love how people do this because they give you some trash opinion and then they will hide it under the idea of, well, I'm just being honest. No, you're being an asshole. Maybe you shouldn't be so honest. But it did make me think about my channel and what I want you to take from this channel. And the way I responded to this particular comment was simply, hey, thanks for your opinion. It's great, but I'm gonna go ahead and continue to do what makes me happy. And that is what I wanted you to pay attention to when you're watching my videos. I definitely share a lot on this channel, a lot of instruction. And, you know, some of that instruction, or a lot of it, and when it comes down to like, hey, here's how you layer hair to not make it look thin, stuff like that, that's fact, right? That's something that I've learned over 26 years of doing hair, literally dealing with tens of thousands of clients. But then there's some of it that's just opinion. And that opinion is simply opinion. It's what I think that I've learned over my time of doing hair. But at the end of the day, if I share something that's opinion, something like, say, for instance, hey, I don't really love mullets, but you do, you need to ignore what I say. My number one goal with this particular channel is I want you to be as confident as you possibly can be. That's why I share these tips. I want you to feel great. I want you to love yourself, and I want you to love the world that you live in. The best way to do that is through being confident. And if that means ignoring what this mouth jabs at you, then ignore me. Please ignore me. Ultimately, do what makes you happy, and just use what I give you as hopefully a little push in a direction that might make that easier for you. I don't know. But nonetheless, I had to make sure that you fully understand that. So I appreciate you hanging out. If you like the content, I haven't said this in a long time, but why don't you consider subscribing? Hang out with the family. Alrighty. Otherwise, check out one of these 2 videos so you can learn some more stuff, and thanks for hanging out. We'll see you next Tuesday. Bye.
I wanna see love make a comeback. I wanna feel hope